Welcome back, everyone, to season 3 of the Welcome to My Tent podcast. I am so excited to be back on air with new episodes, some incredible guests that we have already recorded, and some other incredible people that we have on the books. But I'm going to come in really hot here on this first episode and drop our recording with my mom. I am very grateful to have such a great relationship with my mom, and I have just always considered her one of my biggest inspirations. She is my confidant. She is someone that I am always looking towards and very much so value her advice. And while maybe she's not necessarily parenting me in the same way that she did when I was a teenager, she is still someone that day in and day out I look towards. And I've just been really, really blessed to have someone like her in my life. So I'm going to let her speak mostly for herself, but we dive into a ton of different topics that I think can apply to people in many walks of life. We talk about upbringing and getting married, getting divorced, getting remarried, creating a blended family, managing that aspect of things, co-parenting. We talk about her career change, being a working parent. We talk about how she approached managing parenting 4 kids with very different personalities and needs. We talk about her losing her spouse, which many of you probably know, my stepdad, she lost her husband, and we talk about grief. We talk about a lot in this episode, and she is open and honest, not to mention there's some comedy and humor tossed in there along the way. So we're just going to get right to it, and I hope you enjoy this episode, and thanks for being here. Hey. Hi. Hello. Hey. And welcome to my tent, a place to hear life experiences, different opinions, a range of journeys, and a viewpoint different than our own. A place to challenge our own thoughts, a space to learn a little bit, and I promise some fun along the way. I believe we're better when we let a range of people into our tents, so welcome to mine. So this is the whole thing. This records the voices. So when you talk,
okay, yeah,
that's you.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited because we have actually the longest standing member of my tent here, because you have actually grown me. So
I think I gave birth to the tent.
Actually, yeah you were my tent.
Yeah, right.
And then I was born, and then I made my own tent. But we have my mom here, which I'm very excited about.
Me too.
And we have some questions for you, and we want all of your hot gossip.
Yeah, I wish I had some.
I think you do. On life, your life hot gossip, which I think you have a very interesting story to tell, and so we're going to tell it.
Yeah.
Some of it.
Cool.
Maybe not all of it.
Not all of it.
So on September, starting with the day you were born.
Right.
So do you want to say hi?
Yeah. So hi, everybody. I'm really glad to be here and very flattered that anybody would want to hear what I have to say. Hopefully I'll provide you some interesting intel of some kind or another. I got some pretty cool questions that
yes, thank
that
you.
I got to see. So thank you for that.
To everyone who submitted some questions. And then I created some on my own, nothing too crazy that you have not yet seen, but I promise they're nothing. It's not. Who is your favorite child and why?
Right.
They're nothing too crazy.
Okay.
But if you just want to give a little bit of background on yourself, maybe where you grew up and where you went to school, and sort of touching on some of the career stuff, we'll dive deeper into those aspects with some questions, but just give a little bit of who you are.
Yeah. So I was actually born in Evanston, Illinois, right outside.
I forget that.
Chicago. Yeah. But because that's where my mom's family was from, and my dad worked there. But when I was young, I think I was 4, we moved to Connecticut. So that's where I was raised, in Greenwich, Connecticut. And I went to high school there, and then I went to college in upstate New York, Skidmore College, which is kind of about 30 minutes north of Albany, and did that, and then met Sarah's dad there, and he and I came back to Connecticut, where we lived and got married, and had Sarah and Chris in 1987 and 89. Yeah. And we both worked in the same industry. We both worked in the direct marketing industry, and we did that for a while. And then, unfortunately, our marriage did not survive. But so we got divorced in 91, and then I remarried my late husband Ralph in 91.
Everyone here probably knows.
Yeah, he was the original big tent guy.
Yeah,
and he had 2 kids, and we were very much a blended family. I think you would agree with that, right?
Yeah, and I definitely have some questions there, because I think we, at least from a kid's perspective, had a very high functioning divorced family.
I think that's true.
So I definitely have I would love some of your thoughts there, because it's probably not easy to keep your kids out of what I'm assuming is difficult situations.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in New Canaan, where we lived, there were some people who, the mother had to go to the club on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the father had to go on Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday, and because they hated each other and they had other spouses or whatever. And, we just thought life is way too short for that. So, and your dad was on board with that too. Yeah. So, I think we did. I mean, it probably wasn't always perfect, and the boys lived in Indianapolis and we lived in Connecticut. So,
Pop's 2 older boys.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Along with their mom, Sherry, who we're still friends with to this day. And so we did a lot of traveling, especially him, but everybody really. Yeah. So Indy kind of became sort of a second home for us. But, his philosophy was really the big tent. And that's, everybody needs to get along. We're all family now. And that was just kind of always his way.
Yeah.
And just, none of the nonsense with the fighting. It's just ridiculous. I still text with your dad every now and again. That weird sneezing thing that you all do in the sun.
I know. Dad really wants to be on the show too. And because he heard you were coming on. So now he wants to also come on. So we'll probably get him on too.
Yeah,
but I think it was really nice as well. And we've talked about this, and as I've become more of an adult, we've had more serious conversations about. When I was younger, we were not deeply talking about divorce and whatnot. But I think the biggest thing for us is that, like, you kept any of your, I said there had to have been drama at some points, but you kept it out of the kids' line of sight, which I think really let us make our own decisions on the relationships that we wanted to have with all parties. And you never once have bashed my dad, because I think he really wanted us to be able to, like, form our own relationships and whatnot with that. And we were so young, Chris and I at least were so young when you got married, that Pop was always there. I don't remember anything pre him always just being there. And so I think you did a really good job. Everyone did a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that came from all the adults between Sherry and Pop, and then your dad, Jack, and then me. You just have to make the decision. I saw a therapist for a while, and she said, you have to love your kids more than you hate each other. Mm-hmm. And hate wasn't even in the equation. I mean, I don't think there was a lot of hate going on. It's just it hadn't worked out. And, and then, your dad got married to Megan, has the 2 kids, who I know you're still very close to. And they came to the wedding. That was fun, both of them. And they seemed like very, very nice kids.
Yeah,
so
there's my youngest, so Hadley's 23 and Ralph is 49. So there's like this crazy big gap. But it all somehow works.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how many people may be listening have experienced and or are in the midst of experiencing a divorce. But do you have any words of wisdom or kind of like solace or kind of any thoughts around like how to get through something like that?
Well, no matter how amicable it is, it's horrible. I mean, you can have a really amicable divorce, but it's still an awful process. I mean, it's an undoing of something you didn't think was going to be undone. And of course there's anger on each side, and it would be unrealistic not to expect that there would be some animosity. But I think you just have to keep the kids in focus. And I think that has to be number one, is how the kids feel, and making sure that they don't feel like they have to take sides, making sure that, they're not hearing terrible things, which I heard a lot of, unfortunately, just some terrible stuff. Like, why are you saying that? Maybe you hate him or her, but,
trying to get the kids to take sides or taint their view. I mean, I guess there is a world where that is potentially, like if they're doing something really terrible to
yeah,
but like in a general situation,
right.
I feel like that's not really fair to
it's
the
not.
kids
It's
because at least from my perspective, and I have talked to other siblings, like we came out pretty like untraumatized
I think so.
from the whole thing, which I don't think is common.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I
no,
just am
right.
kind of like, all right, there's all these people and more people to love. And
right.
I had to draw Duke a family tree though.
I think
like,
people still, and especially because, Sherry and I are still really good friends.
Pop's
Like, wait,
ex-wife,
you're friends with your late husband's ex-wife.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we just became friendly, and I like her a lot. And that's been one more, person in our world
she comes to holidays.
There she does. And she loves the grandkids. They call her Grand Sharon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're lucky. We're very lucky. But I give Ralph so much credit for that.
Yeah.
Because that was very much his MO.
Yeah. And most people, I mean, I feel like I've talked about Pop a ton on here, and I think it was just really cool that we technically didn't have to get treated the same as his biological children.
Right,
he was just kind of like, okay. And plus we were little.
Right.
And his kids were past baby, they had gotten.
Drew was 9.
Yeah. 9
and 14.
14. And so then you're like,
when we got married.
My 1-year-old.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like you were 9 months old.
Still in diapers. Like,
It
gets you thrown back in, but.
Right. Plus a girl. That was. He had 3 boys.
Do you think, so from your perspective, because all of the boy siblings say this, like, I got favored by him.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, no, I didn't.
I tell this story that we went to the movies and you were like 2, and Chris, I think it was just you and Chris. Might have been the boys too, though. I think it might have been Home Alone, but whatever it was a big thing. And so you were 2 and he was 4, and then if the boys were there, they were 5 and whatever years older, and you were just being horrible. You were just being absolutely awful, and you were like crying. You were annoying. You were annoying everyone, including me. And I was like, I'm just gonna. So he's like, I'll take care of this, and he snatches you up. I'm like, thank goodness, he's finally gonna go. Just explain to her that you can't behave this way. So I don't pay attention. I come back and he has purchased you the largest bag of M&Ms I've ever seen in my life. And you are just munching away happily. And I'm like, way to go, honey. Way to go.
It was
Reward
then I knew.
bad behavior.
It was then I knew.
He's like, well, she wanted them. I'm like, oh, I guess so. So, yeah.
Well, it's just, you get.
So anyway, I think that was pretty much the way it was. And it's just the way it was.
It was. Okay, maybe we can get into some of the, because some of these will kind of like go into each other, absolutely. Because now we're talking about parenting as well, because you have the experience of raising both boys and girls, as well as step and all of this. So someone asked this really interesting question of like, what is the difference? And if any, like, how did you have to think about parenting differently in terms of having boys and having girls?
Yeah, I thought that was a good question. I thought about that quite a lot. And I don't think when you're doing it, I don't think you're totally aware of thinking, well, she's a girl, so I'm going to do this. And he's a boy, so I'm going to do this. But you do raise them differently. There's no question. And, if you had wanted to play baseball, I would have let you, but you didn't. You wanted to dance. You wanted to do very, very girly stuff. And Chris wanted to do baseball.
Chris wanted to do it.
Yeah. I come from a family very much of girls, so I didn't know about boys. And one time, Chris was about 5, and he threw a rock through the garage window. And I was just furious. I was like, I can't believe you did this. Why did you do that? Why did you? And she's like, I don't know. So Pop got home, and I said, Christopher threw a rock through the garage window today. And he's like, his question was, how far away was he standing? Yeah. And I was like, what? And he said, maybe he has a good arm. I went, wait, what? So I think that's kind of a weird difference about boys, that I was like, wait. A good arm.
But he probably had seen. He'd
seen it all. Of course,
with
the 2 boys, and he had a brother and 2 sisters. But so I don't think you're necessarily aware of doing it, but you do, and I think you try to follow what your kids want. So if your kid is a tomboy and wants to do, girl is a tomboy and wants to do boy stuff, I think you let them do it. I think you just try to let them be the guides as much as you can.
Yeah, and that's like the fine balance of now being a parent myself.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Obviously, Ronan's interests will change. He's 2, so who knows what he will end up being interested in. But we try to like let him be. And I saw this quote the other day that was like, don't steal their struggle. Because like my first instinct whenever anything is slightly bothering him is to fix it for him.
Help
and
him.
So actively kind of like sitting back. And so in terms of the things that maybe Chris and I, or the boys, and I struggled with, that was probably different in terms of potentially with that. And so having to kind of approach those with different lenses. And I also was looking at a quote the other day that was like, you're a first-time parent every time you give birth, because like that kid's going to be really different.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you had to sort of take that into account and just like parent differently than you had to parent Chris, because we're different.
For sure. And there's no question. I mean, it's not really PC anymore, I guess, but boys and girls are just different inherently. They're so different. I look at Ronan, he wants to throw himself off of every single surface he can find.
Every day.
And there are girls like that too. I get it. But I think, you have to acknowledge at least theoretically that there are some just intrinsic differences in being a boy versus being a girl.
Well, then again, so, hormonally also once you're growing up, there's going to be different
stuff like girls are much worse bullies. It's like that whole thing. And
that
just is a girl thing.
Bad bullying.
Yes, and boys might beat the crap out of each other.
Right.
They like might punch each other, which Chris was in plenty of physical altercations. But, they don't like each other. They smack each other. Girls don't like each other. And it's like psychological warfare. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And boys don't do that.
Fifth grade,
sixth grade.
No, I think I was a little bit older. There was...
Yeah, it was
not good. And I'm sure as mom, that's hard. But you can't also...
I went stomping in there.
I know.
And the school did do a good job, I will say, addressing it. But so it's stuff like that just, boys and girls sometimes handle stuff differently.
Right. And you're having to have very different conversations.
Yeah.
About, like, this is affecting you mentally. I'm not getting punched.
Right.
I'm getting affected mentally.
Right.
But I think going back to the kids being the guides of, like, looking at what they need as individuals.
Right.
Because you can't parent.
Right.
And you can't expect your kid. Chris and I really are really.
You are very different people. Although you have some interesting, kind of baseline similarities.
Yeah.
But,
and how we were, like, our values.
Yeah, for sure.
What we, like, familial values, all that stuff. But, like, I am you.
Yeah.
With a lot of things. And he can be more relaxed. I would love in a lot of ways.
Me too.
Like, how are you this?
I know how you're so chill. I know.
So it's just funny that it's like the same.
But even as girls grow up and you're going into college and then we had to talk about, you have to worry about, like, don't get pregnant, which boys should be given the same talk. And I think Chris and I did. And he's like, oh God, please, Jesus. But so boys need to be responsible too. But I always feel like, with the girls, you really have to be vigilant because it's you, and so just even stuff like that, which you say to boys, hey, be a gentleman. No means no, all that stuff. But I always sort of felt with girls, you really have to, be vigilant. That's all there is to it.
Stick up for yourself.
And stick up for yourself and be careful.
Yeah.
Just take care of, take care of yourself.
Yeah. So this is an interesting kind of segue and question too, because this also came up in terms of your career, because you've also very much so taught me we can do anything that men can do. And you were in... So there's the two-part here, because you were in the same industry as Dad and as Pop, direct marketing. You had a big career, and you were in the room with a lot of powerful men. And I know that you have both, like, very funny and also very kind of challenging stories around that. What was that experience like?
I was lucky because, Sue, I have a very good friend, Sue Jacobson, and she is 10 years older than I, and she's a lawyer, and she came up the decade before I did, which was that much more difficult. I kind of skirted some of the crap she had to do, like, you can't be pregnant and be a lawyer, all this crazy stuff. And she ended up as a partner in the firm and, doing incredibly well. But I didn't really have that. Plus, our industry had a lot of women, very powerful women.
Yeah.
So, and it was also interesting. It was a very creative industry. So there were gay people, there were trans people. I mean, even then, a really wide variety of people. And we all were just like, yeah, that's cool. Let's just do what we do.
Yeah.
And so I was really lucky that way. I came up in an industry and raised by parents who were like, hey, you go in, and if it's a bunch of men that you're sitting down with, just talk to them,
right? Know your just as...
And know your stuff. Be prepared. And, don't take anything for granted. Do your work hard, keep your nose down, all that stuff. So I was lucky. I will acknowledge I never had an issue where someone said, hey, if you don't sleep with me, you won't get a promotion or anything like that. And I know that exists, and it's horrific. So I might have had a few off-color comments, but nothing like that.
Yeah.
So I was lucky that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't that kind of industry.
And I think your work ethic and your testament, like people knew that you would get it done and you were serious.
Right.
And I don't think I didn't want to mess with you because you also can like give it back. Like you can hang with them. You can really hold your own, but in a good way. Like,
I
can
know
hold your own.
Yeah, I know.
And like run with the best of them, which I think is also a quality that you taught me. Like,
and I think it's somewhat genetic, and my parents were both pretty strong people. But I think basically it really always comes down to know the task you have, do it on time, be professional, be thorough, do what your boss wants you to do. It really comes down to pretty much common sense.
Yeah.
And the whatever the client wants, client gets pretty much. I mean, within reason.
Within reason.
Yeah.
And sometimes
dinner with me at midnight. Maybe not.
Sometimes it gets out of control.
It does sometimes. And we used to call them vendor benders. You get the clients that are just really obnoxious people and they know they're a big client. So you do deal with some of that. But fortunately, I didn't deal with a lot. I had the people at Rodale who were amazing.
Yeah,
that was my biggest client. And
standing
in Omaha, which is where I was, as you know, most of the time.
Omaha's traumatizing. Omaha's traumatizing for me, listener.
Only because my husband would always say, "Mom's in Omaha" when I was at the grocery store. But I did spend a lot of time.
They would travel for work a lot, right? And like we were very lucky. We had an incredible family support system, and we had like
really good
nannies that we all loved. But I would always be sad, rightly so, when my parents would go away. And usually it was to Omaha. And so it got to the point where I would come home from wherever and ask Pop where Mom was. She'd be at the grocery store and he would say, Omaha. And I would be all up. People are probably like, oh my God, what? You're like toting about how amazing your parents are. Here they are traumatizing you.
I know.
But you did travel quite an amount. A lot. And so then you did this with very young children.
I did, although
I'm sure was
it was challenging. But I have to say, for you and your friends now, I think it's so much more difficult because you have we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have cell phones, none of that. And it sounds like maybe that could have been an issue, but it made life so much simpler.
Well, because when you leave the office,
I mean, I see you and your, cohorts, and I'm just amazed by how much you guys do and, trying to juggle everything and trying to deal with all this stuff, especially for you. Your challenge is going to be kids and screen time and all of that. How do you balance it so they get the good stuff and not the bad stuff?
We do our best. I mean, I think that's...
But you and your friends all seem to have a really good handle on that. And I think that would be very challenging. And I don't have that.
Yeah, and you were also very pro, which I am as well. Pro help. I mean, we couldn't. You couldn't have done this without.
Absolutely.
We were in preschool for a little, and then you had some incredible nannies,
and some that weren't so good. Margie wasn't.
Margie wasn't great. She was the one
outside when it was cold,
and she stole your donuts. Was she the donut?
She did. She would always eat my donuts, which is amazingly annoying. So yeah,
you like it was your Entenmann's. Entenmann's. Would you like to sponsor us? Sponsored by Entenmann's.
Yeah. So we had not always good, but then we ended up with Molly Solomon,
who we had amazing. Until we could drive, essentially.
Yeah. And Daryl, of course, was. She was there when you were young, and she was so good.
I don't remember.
We were lucky, but. And I have to be honest, I occasionally you feel like, a little bit of guilty, but I never really felt a lot of guilt. I was like, hey, I want to work. I need to work. And this is important to me, and the kids will be fine. And it turned out just fine.
Yeah. I would thank you. I would say for the most part, I'm well adjusted.
It's all pretty good.
I don't remember ever feeling like, oh, she's never around. Like you were always also there for the stuff that I wanted you to be there for, recital or like you were not working so much that it was like I was raised by a nanny. We were very much so raised by our parents, but I also came to love. Molly would make me baklava. I know. And teach me French.
And she stopped at the stop sign.
Oh, and she would count to three.
Or three.
1, 2, and she was like very thick accented. They were so great. But then I forget exactly how old I was. Like from the way that I remember it, I know this is probably not how it happened. It's like you woke up one day and decided, I'm going to teach ESL. So a pretty
No, you remember your brother was quite challenging in terms of raising in school. And I was in the principal's office about twice a week. I mean, Leanne, who worked with me, got to the point where she would know whether to come get me out of a meeting.
Right.
Okay, Molly, it's Dr. Sanders. You got to go. And no, it's his assistant. I think you're fine. But he was just so challenging. And I just got to the point where I thought, I need to be home more. And then I got into the ESL community in Stanford and adult ed.
English as a second language.
Right,
ESL.
Right, ESL. Right. And then got my master's degree in that, and then started teaching at UConn, and then came to Arizona. So that was a really fun second career that allowed me to be home during the day.
Yeah, because you would sometimes have class or like
I taught at night.
Learning classes, like college,
right,
master's classes, and then you went and you did some teaching.
Yeah. So, and Pop was incredibly supportive of that too. So, second career.
We're a bit older as you started getting more into it. So we were also
that was like
driving.
2000-ish.
No, really?
2001. When was 9/11? It was right after that. So 2001 or 2002. So, however old you were in 2002. 13. Yeah.
And then by the time that you were like into teaching, either Chris had a license pretty early on or I got mine. Right. And then we were involved with sports and like
right after school stuff and
running around.
Right. So so that was really, really nice to have a second career like that I was able to, come to Arizona and teach at Pima, which is an amazing place. Just the best. So and meet so many incredible students. Oh my gosh.
Have become
so many amazing. And Maru is
Maru.
Are you now?
Maru, are you listening?
Maru is listening.
Hello, Maru.
With her sweet boy.
I know. So. It's been really fun, but there was also another question because I kind of consider this kind of like you're now, what is it, like third act? Because you're retired, you've retired from everything, but now art has become has like resurged as a passion for you because I've shared some of the art pieces and people are like, did she just randomly start doing this? But what has been your like whole career in art in your life?
Yeah, my grandmother was an artist. My dad's mom was really good. And so my mom, I think early on kind of wanted to, see if we were. And so she hired drawing teachers when we were really young, like 7, 8 years old. Yeah. So I remember starting drawing then. And then I just kind of kept it up, but only on a halfway thing. And then I went to Skidmore, which is an art school.
Yeah.
And all my roommates were artists. So one of them was just amazing. And I just loved her style. So I watched what she did and I, watched how she drew. And then, I did a summer art thing there. And then again, life gets busy, you have work, you do stuff. And so it kind of put it on the back burner, until the last few years. And we've got this place called the Drawing Studio in Tucson. And it's been really fun to get back into it. And I think you're good. I think if you wanted to, you could be good. Again, it would require a different focus for you, which you may just, at this point is not probably reasonable.
Yeah, that's how I feel about golf. I mean, golf, like
or pickleball, even anything like
that. Yeah, sport or anything like that. It's just even like I loved needlepoint and as do you, but it's at the end of a day,
has the time? I know.
I need to sit in a dark room alone and not do anything. And so it's just tough, but you've really kind of picked it back up.
I have.
In the past few years in particular.
Yeah, I have. And it's been really fun. I've been trying a lot of different mediums. We still prefer graphite and charcoal, but I've been doing some, a little bit of work with acrylic and some water.
I'll show you. I'll show you the Finn picture. She did an acrylic painting of her dog that I demanded to keep.
So anyway, that's been really fun and just a nice creative outlet for me. Yeah. And I've been busy in retirement. I mean, it's just crazy. Busy.
I call her and she's like, I can't go talk now.
Pickleball.
Or you're like you're with Sue, or you're with a group, or you're at this or that, or at the studio, or you're taking yoga. You have the busiest schedule I've ever seen.
It's pretty crazy
of anyone, but it's been really nice that we're 2 hours. Tucson's about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so you actually just randomly decided to come
I did. I was just like, hey, I need to.
And then you stole my hat.
Complicated life, so I decided I needed a little break.
Well, you just have a lot going on, and like you just needed a little reprieve. So she's up right now, but also what's really nice is you're around 3 out of your 5 grandkids.
It is, and that's my only regret is that the other 2 are not, because they're so cute too. But
they're not too far, but
they're not, and we are trying to do at least the family reunion
every year. But 3 of the grandkids are here. So this is actually a question submitted by one of your grandkids. This is Olivia's question, and she asked
Olivia's 6.
Also very good at art.
Yeah.
But
She's amazing.
Olivia heard that I was having you on this podcast, and she wants to know what your favorite thing is about being mayor, which is
Not being
what
mayor,
we
as
call
they call me as mayor.
as grandma.
My favorite thing is I am like the luckiest person. Just thinking about how lucky I am. Honestly, I have got, 5 grandchildren. I've got, 4 kids, collective kids. 3 of them are married to people that I really like, that make them happy.
Yeah.
That's incredibly important to every mother and father and, a parent. And I'm insanely lucky. And it's, just for a million reasons. And Pop was such a huge, I'm starting with your dad. Obviously, if I hadn't married him, I wouldn't have you guys as kids. I know.
Hi, Dad. Dad's listening. Dad's the number one fan of this podcast.
No, he obviously was incredibly important in my life. And so, and then, I've got the 2 kids with him, and then meeting Ralph, who was just very much my guy. I mean, it's just impossible to understand how the kind of odd relationship that we had, because we're both such strange people. Not very many people could live with me. I mean, I'm not easy, believe me, and neither was he.
But I feel like the things that were difficult about each of you, like, were not the same thing.
Exactly.
So, or didn't phase the other.
We were both like so maniacal about being alone, but then we like to, have dinner and watch Netflix together. Right. So it was all good. But mostly I just feel lucky that I have, such incredibly nice children, and they found people that they love, and then that I've got these 5 grandchildren that are just awesome.
Adore you.
Oh, and they're so sweet. All of them are just so sweet. It's just,
and I love
and smarter than every other child, of course. All of them.
As a grandma has to say, this smartest,
but it is
most
true.
Beautiful.
It is true, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you do, and you get to see that, some of them, with San Fran kids.
That's it. Well, at least we've got the family photo thing.
Yeah.
San Fran kids, so we get to see them, and that's really fun. And it's just been amazing watching you guys, go off and live your lives. And I chatted with Drew the other day, and he's doing great, and he's golfing, and he's got all his buddies.
Oh, Drew!
And I'm going to go see them in August. By the way, if you want to
come, we
should talk about that. Yeah.
Well, when is it?
We won't talk. August sometime. We won't talk about our travel plans on this.
Should I book flights? So Duke would. That's the thing about Duke. He'd be like, let's just book it right now. Duke, we're in a podcast. Right. We can't do this.
But anyway, we do that almost every year, and they love it. And then, of course, my Pop's sister lives there, and her husband, and the sister's kid, and Joe's kid, and their grandkids. So.
And you get to give the kids back.
Yeah,
like,
there is that.
I'm going to go back to my home.
Yeah, but it's so fun. Like when I had the girls in February, they're getting old enough now so that it's, no diapers. It's a little bit easier when they're 4 and 6. But just
my one who's like constantly trying to kill himself.
Yeah, and that's true too. Yeah. So I'm just lucky that that's my favorite part about being married. It's just
that's so sweet.
Being lucky.
Because you got that title 6 years ago.
I did.
It's a little over 6. But another interesting question that someone asked, and I thought this was a fascinating question as well, is you do have both boys and girls, but this came from someone who only has boys. And what is it like, and how did you approach loving a son and a daughter-in-law? Because it's an interesting thing, and you typically don't get them until your children are grown.
Exactly.
So, like, what's that experience?
Yeah, and again, because I have, so Chris was the first one to get married, and Ralph and Catherine got married in 16, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ralph was the first one to get married, but I think that Chris and Jess had already been together for
like
about 17
years.
Yeah. I mean, they were together forever before they got married. So I guess I would start with them only because I think they had the first sort of long-term thing.
Yeah. And
Jess had been around for a long time, and she just fit right in with our family. I mean, that girl she just jumped in with both feet.
Well, the first time we all met her was at a funeral.
It was at a
death party.
Yeah. And she just absolutely jumped in and just rolled with our family. I mean, she says we're not an easy bunch, and she just like jumped right in, and she's just I love her. And then Ralph was lucky enough to meet Catherine, and somebody he fell in love with, and she fell in love with him, and then they got married. They had a beautiful wedding in California, and I was so happy that Pop met her and knew that he got married, and I think saw both of the kids. Hugh had just been born, but got to see that, his grandchildren. from Ralph and Catherine. And I think that was, incredibly important. And then you and Duke got married in 18, right? And
I should know that.
And so I'm just lucky because I've had, between my daughter-in-law and my son-in-law, just really cool people. You guys picked very, very well. And, and of course, and I also love Duke's parents. They just are so cool.
They're the best.
So that's just been really, really nice.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting thing, because all of a sudden, there's this like little saying that's like something like a son is your son till he takes a wife, and your daughter's your daughter all her life, something like that. And basically saying that, when the son meets the wife, basically the
You're
mom
kicked out?
is not exactly, but his priorities change, and I get it. And I think that's absolutely true. And Jessica has no problem, sort of figuratively smacking him around.
You're probably like, take him.
I've always been,
thank God I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I adore him. But I think, girls tend to have a little bit of a different relationship. So
yeah, and we're lucky. We're very, very close. I would say we've always been close. And I was thinking of this like an interesting sense too, because growing up, which I 100% agree with, you did a very good job of like not just wanting to be my friend. Like you parented.
Right.
Like there was a line. You were open, and I was very, very close with you, but like there was a line where you were like, I'm the mom.
Right.
You're still a child.
Right.
And now obviously I would kind of laugh if you like, we're like, go, you're grounded.
Right.
I'm 35 years old. But now we're sort of like, there's been like friend elements that come back in as you get older, because you had to toe that line.
Well, and now you're a wife and a mom,
right? And so
it's a different,
like you're not. Thing. There's no like parenting. Well, I ask your advice on a million different things, but now it's more of like a peer.
It is
versus like in high school, you were, open and amazing, and we had a very good relationship, but like you did have to have times where you were like,
right.
I know you don't like me right now.
You can't wear that mini skirt to your
I tried to wear a leather mini skirt to my grandmother's funeral.
And it was about 3 inches long.
Listen.
Maybe.
I was grieving.
And I said, you can't do that.
I was grieving.
This girl had a massive meltdown.
I think there was some door slamming.
Stomp, 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 slam. I hate you. Slam, slam, slam. I hate you. Slam, slam, slam. And like you repeatedly slammed the door. But bang, but bang, but bang.
You're just airing all of my
And I'm just down there. I'm like, okay.
I did not wear the skirt.
No,
I don't remember what I wore.
I don't either, but it wasn't that skirt.
But that's the line you have to toe.
Yes, exactly.
Where like now I think you would be like, interesting skirt.
Yeah. But you wouldn't wear something inappropriate now. So
exactly.
When you're
have
16,
to find
you're
that
trying
line
to,
of, and so it's interesting, I think, too, when you get son and daughters-in-law, is like you're done parenting.
Yes, exactly.
You're never really done being a parent. But you know what I mean? Like you're kind of like now stepping into this as a son, quote unquote, or a daughter that you also aren't parenting, which is an interesting thing.
I know some people who despise their, daughters-in-law or sons-in-law, and that's just a terrible situation.
Yeah,
that is a terrible situation. I mean, that just becomes untenable. So I'm not there.
Well done, in-laws.
So yeah, I know. Well done, children.
Right.
I think that's, kids, you guys did well.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. I'm always doing well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is an interesting question. And I think a lot of this, obviously, as you parent, a lot of the times we are products of our environment. And so I did not know my mom's mom.
Right.
She died when I was young.
Oh yeah.
But my grandfather did remarry and have Susan, but I was very, very close with my grandfather. And so how did they raise you, and how did you take that? And this was Jess's question, actually.
Yeah,
speaking of daughter-in-laws, is like, what were some of the favorite things that they taught you?
Yeah, they were just really interesting parents because they were, hands-on in many ways, but hands-off in a lot of ways. And again, I think it's somewhat the time. But like they would just say, go outside and play. We played Foursquare in the street. I mean, we didn't have the internet. We had to go outside. But mostly with me, they just taught me that you can just do whatever you want. You can do anything that you want in terms of your life, what you want to be, what you want to do. No.
Set the house on fire? Yeah.
No. I mean, in terms of your potential, what you want, you can do absolutely anything in the world that you want. You just have to work for it, and you have to work hard for it, and you can't cut corners. And, when I was young, I wanted to get my hair highlighted starting when I was like 14 or 15. It was very, very expensive. And my mom's like, no, you want to do it. You babysit, you work,
right.
You do whatever you have to do. I'm not paying.
They were there to obviously give you the things you need.
Yes. But if you want extras, you work for it.
Yeah.
And so that was just an incredibly good lesson. They were both incredibly tolerant people, of all sorts of stuff in terms of other people and ways of thinking. They might not agree with something, but they always were like, hey, you got to listen. You may not agree.
So lacking, but especially today, people are just intolerant of listening to anyone's
that doesn't agree with them.
But I remember that from Poppy in particular, and that's how you raised us.
Yeah.
Is this person's no less valuable than this person because of who they are and what they do,
or what they think, which you might not agree.
Well,
with.
I mean, Ted Bundy. Let's maybe obviously. We're not going to tell you that he's a good guy, but very golden rule. Like you would want to be treated, and I definitely remember that from Poppy.
Yeah,
because he was like very no nonsense, but also very warm. It was this interesting dynamic.
Yeah,
because he had an intensity to him. But also just this like squishy, lovable.
Well, and he's a World War II guy, so of course, with Japanese people, you could be upset if you were a World War II vet, right? Yeah. And he was just, I remember I said to him, he said, oh, I've got a really good friend, he's Japanese. And he said, he asked me, he's young.
Interesting.
Oh my God, you're a World War II vet. Do you hate us?
Me?
And he's like, no, I not at all. And he just wasn't that way. I mean, he was also very modest about World War. He never talked about being a soldier. I mean, he never did.
Even to us.
No.
Didn't he do like one thing for Chris's school?
Oh, he did. Because
he ended up
in
not,
he was in a hospital for like
not just infirmary. His feet almost had gangrene.
Yeah, in France. But anyway, even though this was war, and there was obviously this two sides hated each other, and he was always like, no, there's no room for that. No, there's no room for that.
Plus, it's not that individual person that did everything.
Exactly. But there's plenty of people that hate. It's like intolerance. Well, I mean, look at now. I mean, look at what's happening on these college campuses. It's just crazy.
I know.
And I think my parents would have said, you listen to every side. You listen to what people have to say as long as they're being respectful and peaceful.
Yeah.
You listen. You may not agree with one thing they say, but you listen respectfully. And you have a discussion if that's what you want to do.
And there's just certain things you're never going to change that person's mind.
And they're not going to probably change you either.
And so there's a whole, but I do think that a lot of their teachings came into how you parented and you tried to raise us. And I especially I was thinking a lot about this as well. And this is kind of a question for you too, is like, I don't mind saying this. And there's, people that know me know this. Like we grew up privileged. I mean, we grew up with everything we could have ever needed.
Yeah.
But I think the same thing, like the hair highlights, like it's an interesting thing you probably had to manage of like, we could, but we won't.
Right.
Because we're going to make sure you're clothed and fed and have a safe, warm house that you can like thrive in.
Right.
But I also remember like, hey, I want these designer jeans. And there were times where you're like, okay, if you can get 50, we'll go 50-50 if you want it as a gift. Like it wasn't just an immediate get everything that you ever want. And that was important. Like looking back, I was like, oh, I want it. I'm probably being a brat, but I think it also taught me the value of like, okay, self-sufficiency. That's a big thing too. If it's meant to be, it is up to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Tattooed on my face.
Exactly.
I think though, like I'm grateful for it now, where it's like we had everything we could have ever needed. Like we were blessed beyond measure.
Yeah, we were.
But you weren't going to say like, sure, let's go spend $1,000 for no reason on a shopping. Like,
right.
You were like, we need to close at the beginning of the school year. You get your things. We make sure that you have everything.
Right.
But like, we did grow up in a town where people were just oh, I crashed my Range Rover. I'll just get a new one. Very like that.
I know, same thing.
Yeah.
Same
it's now balancing that with Ronan is like, okay, what is a want versus a need?
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
I get it.
And he's so little that for him, pretty much everything is either his need or your want.
Well, it's my want.
Yeah. But I mean, but you'll figure that out.
Yeah. But I appreciate that now because you have to teach that value in people.
Yeah, I think so. I think you do. It's just that not everything is just going to be.
I'm very, very grateful for how we grew up. I think it's a lot of the reason why I'm able to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, yes.
Like, I think
Pop used to call it the Lucky Sperm Club.
Right,
You know, like
right.
we grew up with, and his parents too.
I do think though, like I had it set up so I could succeed. I mean, I work hard, obviously, but
yeah, I think
I
and
didn't
that's
have
a
to like
parent's
overcome
job,
a
right?
hurdle.
If you can, is just set up so that your kids can do well,
can thrive.
Yeah.
But I think, it's just interesting, and I think you did a great job raising your kids.
But we also, we had kids that were also, good kids and intelligent and all that stuff. So that we didn't have.
I also always say we're all going to give our kids something special, complex wise. Like we're all going to mess up inside. There's just no way you can all.
But we were lucky too, because I know some people struggle with children who have, are on the spectrum, whatever you call it now. And so they deal with some serious challenges, and I respect those people so much, and it must be challenging sometimes. Yeah. And at least fortunately, you guys, were able to move along, and they didn't have a lot of that kind of challenge. And I've always really admired parents who navigate through that.
Yeah.
Because that can't be easy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is a really fun one. What is a piece of advice you would give someone in their 20s and someone in their 30s?
Let's see. I guess, let me think. In your 20s, it's so funny because I was married to your dad when I was 25.
That's
so young now. It just seems
I would have been
young.
Married for 10 years.
I know. It just seems like such a baby now. But I think, maybe in your 20s is a good time to be focusing on, your job and where do you want to go career-wise and all that kind of stuff. And then, in your 30s, maybe more on family and stuff. I mean, not everything all works out exactly the way you think it's going to work out.
I mean, you saw that with us, and
I did.
I
did. And so here you are thinking, now it's the 30s and it's time to have kids. And
also you didn't think you didn't get married thinking, I'm going to get divorced now. Like
exactly. And I got married and thought, we'll have kids whenever. And then, so gosh, I guess it was 3 years later, that I had Chris. So we'd been married for kind of a long time. And so I don't know. And I think a lot of it is, trust your gut. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is trust your gut, because every person kind of knows in your heart what is happening and what the right thing is. I just think people do if they would just sit down and think, okay, what does my gut tell me here?
Yeah.
I think it's important, really, in all of your life.
And having confidence to move on that. I think our fear will overtake that voice.
Yeah.
My friend Alexa, intuition whispers, anxiety screams. And so sometimes the screams can be very loud and overtake.
Right. And I'm talking to people who got married because they really thought they should, knowing all the while, he's not right.
Yeah.
But they still did. And then, so I think that kind of thing, not so easy when you're young.
25.
Easier when you get older, it's much easier to sort of say, okay,
Sometimes I'm like, I'm 35, but I still have.
I know. But anyway,
that,
just
though.
listen
Trust
to
your gut.
Listen to yourself.
Trust your gut. This one's kind of a doozy and kind of a big one. But this is a general question. Like, what was your experience grieving and losing a spouse? Because also something could happen depending on who dies first.
Yeah.
But I don't think you expected it when you did.
No, I mean, as you know, he was diagnosed a week after your wedding.
Yeah.
And that was just incredible. And it was already stage 4 lung cancer
it
at that
was,
point.
they told us it was.
Yeah, so we knew right away that this was not going to end well. And Pop and I are both very tightly wound people in terms of just not very emotional and not, that's just not the way we process stuff. And so we just kind of moved one foot in front of the other. And he's incredibly brave, too. I mean, just an incredibly brave person, stoic, all of it. And so, and he and I, we had always said everything that we had to say to each other, but we did very practical stuff. Like for that 14 months, we went and looked at our wills again. We made sure they said exactly what we wanted. We made sure that the house was exactly the way we wanted. We sold the big house because he didn't want me in this big house. We met with the lawyer. We met with the accountant. We met with everybody. And just because he was so practical that money had been his deal. And he was like, nope. you got to meet with Bill Holiday, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. And so
love Bill.
Yeah, we do. And so we did all that, just literally take it day by day by day by day. And then when he died, he wrote, I don't mean to laugh, but he wrote his own obituary, and you and I had to be like, what? Because his mind had, the cancer had got to his brain. He was on a lot of meds, right? So he'd written this big long manifesto.
And his he had very specific handwriting.
And also in the first grade, he was in Ralph,
and he did it all in the third person. Ralph was born, and we're like, what? And then he wanted us to put the obituaries in the Wall Street Journal. But I remember,
which we did.
Well, it was funny
because
really
expensive.
I tried to like take things off you, right? Where I was like, Mom, what can I do? What can I handle? And you're like, can you please get this obituary into these 3 publications? Right. I'm like, sure. Indianapolis Star, the Stanford Advocate, and the Wall Street Journal. Right. And so the first 2 were fine. Like, I had your credit card, and so I go to do it in the Wall Street Journal, and it was like a 10-page paragraph, like with a thesis statement, like, and I'm like, Mom, like, I know you told me to handle this, but it's like $7,500 to put in the Wall Street Journal because it was so long, and so literally it was like Ralph Drabero died, period, and it was still like $1,000.
Well, and he was so adamant. You tell people how I died in the obituary. I hate it when people don't tell you how they died. I'm like, okay,
Ralph Drabero died. It was cancer, period, in the Wall Street Journal.
Of lung cancer. No, not just cancer. Lung cancer.
He was a specific guy.
So he was just very weird that way. And so, and then when he was gone, we'd had, I talk about this with some friends who have lost husbands suddenly. We had 14 months, which is better in some ways, as opposed to the husband who died. And, I have one acquaintance who found out some really awful stuff about him after he died, only by going through his emails God, and that's just horrible. Yeah. So all the affairs were in order. In some ways it's hard. It's a long, slow descent, but, I think we did it right. And he left a legacy of like, move forward, get on with it, like, live your life. He
told me I was allowed to cry, but not that much.
Exactly. And so, and that was it. Like, go move forward. And I think I have.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. And I've talked a lot about this just on my page and in podcasts and whatnot, how differently all of us experienced the grief. And
absolutely.
You had a different experience with it, I think, because you lived. We would come home as much as we could, but you lived so closely with him.
Right.
That juxtaposition was really, really different. And I think you've done a really good job of like letting yourself be sad. Like you have to also let yourself be kind of sad, but you also have to pick yourself up. And what I think I really appreciate is all of us, but you in particular have really also worked hard to make sure the rest of us stick together, and the kids, we all still see each other.
Oh, you do. And you guys have done a great job.
We don't want ever to have that go away.
No. You guys are very, tightly bonded, I think. Yeah. And that, again, that's all credit to him.
And I think you've done a good job too. Like, you obviously still love him very, very much.
Oh, for sure.
But you also know it's okay to not be sobbing at a certain point, that's not going to do you good.
No, and moving on with my dating life and stuff. No. Oh my God.
I thought you were going to go there.
Well, I will say that I have been lucky that I have. I know. Somebody.
Well, I literally was like trolling on my mom's dating profile. I like forced her to like.
She did. She's like,
I was pressing all the buttons.
Yeah, and you can't write that. She's like, Mom, you can't write that. You sound like a serial killer.
Yeah, I'm like, you can't.
I'm totally introverted. I don't like going.
What I really love is you got a professional photo shoot with your dog.
The dog
done.
Yeah,
so you could have. They're gorgeous photos, I will say, and they are really nice photos.
And they are, and I'm just lucky I ended up with somebody who's very cool, and
it's been really,
and it's been 4.5 years, so
it's been really fun. Because now, like I was saying, like, you're not, just parent, you don't parent. We're very, very close, and so it's been really interesting to watch,
and you meeting him,
like guide you. And I like, you were asking me advice. I'm like, Mom, I haven't dated in 10 years. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what this either.
And the poor guy, like each time,
oh my God,
meets a little more of the family each time, because our family is so overwhelming.
Let me loose on him, which was, and we had like 17 bottles of wine.
We went to a wine dinner.
That was really, really fun.
Yeah.
But,
anyway, so that's,
to...
but, I feel, 4.5 years later,
yeah,
took me a long time.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to take anything like that at your own pace. Because if you were going to force that too soon, that's not going to go well.
Right.
But also it's a line of, this is with anything. Like, you have to also do it a little scared because you're never going to feel fully ready for anything, whether that's opening a business, whether that's starting a new career, whether that's dating someone, married, you're
sometimes
never having kids,
Yep.
we're never going to feel fully prepared.
Right.
So it's a line of like not doing it too soon, but also not letting yourself wait too long.
If you
get true.
True. And if you want that, and some people don't, some people after they're like, nope. I know some women whose husbands died 20 years ago and they're perfectly happy and they're like, no. But, I kind of miss that. I miss having a guy around and a guy's point of view.
You don't just want my point of view?
Well, but it's just different.
Yeah.
It's just different,
Well, and you deserve camaraderie. You deserve people that make you feel happy and to hang around with. Like you said, you have a very full life and
jumping on the motorcycle.
And you're very you're going to be like 187 years old when you die.
Well, unfortunately, I can do that. I can live until I'm 187.
Right.
It'll be fine. I won't have to be eating cat food. So
that's one thing she has requested.
But don't let me eat
don't let you eat cat food in a old
if they have to.
But you still you have a lot of zest for life.
I do,
and I've got outdoors and exercise and pickleball and activities, and you're very involved. And except for when you're done, you're like, please leave my house. But same.
In a nice way.
It was funny over Thanksgiving. We're sitting at the table having Thanksgiving dinner, and I had picked up on the vibe that my mom's like, I don't want to be around any of you people anymore. And so my sister-in-law Jess is like, okay, so we'll come over, and then looks at my mom and goes,
or not.
We could all get when she's like, I love you, please leave.
Yeah, she laughed.
Please leave.
But I do, and I love my family. I love you guys.
Oh, of course. I'm like that though.
But I think, and that is my nature. I'm pretty solitary by my nature. But I like my alone time. I guess that's what.
Yes. I think you think that you're antisocial. But you're not. You really just like solidarity sometimes. But you're not like a hermit.
No. But there's a lot of times I need to be alone.
Yeah. And there are certain events and things where you're like, not my cup of tea. Yeah. But you're not.
No, I do like hanging out.
And I think in the past couple of years too, especially as you've entered more of a new, totally in retirement, you picked up pickleball, you ingrained yourself into it.
Because you do have to. If you want, getting out there is kind of important. If that's something, but I do need to kind of be alone too.
Same. Duke also knows. He's like, okay. I'm like, if you speak to me, I'm serving you divorce papers. I'm literally going to.
Not go well.
No.
Yeah.
I think all of us have.
But then I think it makes you so much. Then once you're kind of chilled again, then you're ready to see people again.
Okay. Are you ready just for some last minute rapid fire questions? Okay. There's nothing crazy. Okay. What's your favorite drink?
Oh my God. Water, I think. Right now that's pretty much what I like. An occasional Coke. Alcohol, I do like my wine, but I've had a few issues with my
water. No one's going to listen to this podcast.
Okay, well, there
just kidding. Okay, you can pick water.
Okay, all right.
What is your favorite food?
Chicken. I know when you're growing up, you're like, God,
boiled chicken and water. I promise, man.
Maybe rice. Or do you like Asian food? I like Japanese food.
Okay. If you could own, money is not an object or a question. If you could own the house of your dreams anywhere in the U.S., where would it be?
Probably Northern California.
Same.
Yeah.
Like a big, wonderful, beautiful house in a vineyard.
Country.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the only rapid fire questions I had prepared. But Mom, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks, really of course. Thanks for
and
growing
thanks
me
to
in
your
your body.
incredible group. I've been so amazed by some of the people you've met, especially the IVF community.
Yeah,
just stories of bravery and goodness and incredible fortitude and kindness and community and stuff. It has, more than once really brought a tear to my eye what an incredible community it is.
Yeah.
It is. And that's, of course, the internet, right? Which we didn't
it
have
has
access.
Its catch 22, but I will say it's better than it is not.
Yeah, and so that's just something I've been amazed to see is your community online, especially with that, which is a very fraught time and subject for everybody.
It's not fun.
It isn't. It isn't, but you've had some funny stories out of it, especially with some of the breast milk stuff that you're like, wait, I'm trying to give it away. So I wouldn't want it.
Yeah, like giving away my breast milk to Kate.
That was hilarious.
Oh my God.
She's like, I'll just come pick it up.
Yeah. Weren't you there?
Exactly.
I think you were visiting. I was like, who wants my boob milk?
It was funny.
No, thank the internet.
But just so nice.
Crazy.
I've just been really happy.
Yeah, I feel like people have been really excited to hear you.
Well, I'm so
because they've obviously seen you.
Yeah.
Also, I'm sorry if no one can tell who's speaking.
I know.
Because people say our voices sound exactly the same.
I know that's
hopefully
true.
That's
I'm sure they'll figure that
But
out.
Mommy, thank you.
Well,
I love
thanks
you
for
so
having me.
much.
I love you too.
Okay, let's go downstairs.
Okay,
bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Welcome to My 10 podcast. I hope you had as much fun listening as I do recording. I am so happy to have you here, and see you next episode.